This Week in AI was not really about one model beating another model on a leaderboard. That happened in the background, sure, but the larger pattern was more important. This was the week where AI looked less like an app category and more like infrastructure. Google used I/O 2026 to show Gemini moving into search, Android, developer tools, video creation, shopping, agent workflows, and personal assistants. OpenAI did not lead with a new model. It led with Provenance, C2PA conformance, SynthID watermarking through a partnership with Google, and a verification tool preview. Anthropic made 2 enterprise moves in 1 week. It acquired Stainless, a company focused on SDK and MCP server tooling, and it announced that Claude is being pushed across KPMG's global workforce. Cohere released Command A Plus and bought Reliant AI, which points towards sovereign and regulated enterprise AI. Mistral announced a deal to acquire Emmy AI, bringing physics AI into its industrial strategy. GitHub made GPT 5.3 Codex the base model for Copilot Business and Enterprise. NVIDIA reported record quarterly revenue and reorganized how it reports around data center and edge computing. Those stories sound different, but they are not separate. They are all signs of the same phase change. The AI market is moving from demos to workflows, from chat windows to systems of action, from single model announcements to distribution, trust, connectors, governance, vertical expertise, and hardware capacity. That is why this episode is longer than a quick headline recap. The useful question is not just what launched. The useful question is what each announcement tells us about where AI is going next. Google is trying to make Gemini the operating layer for consumer intent. OpenAI is trying to make generated media more verifiable. Anthropic is trying to make enterprise agents more connected and governable. Cohere and Mistral are trying to make AI work in specialized industries where generic assistants are not enough. GitHub is showing how AI coding becomes enterprise software. NVIDIA is showing the size of the infrastructure bill underneath all of it. So today we are going story by story, but we are watching for one through line. AI is becoming a layer inside everything else. The next competitive advantage is not only model intelligence. It is where the model runs, what tools it can reach, how the output is verified, how it is governed, and whether the economics scale. Before we zoom into each company, let us map the week. There were 7 big moves, and they line up almost too cleanly. First, Google I/O 2026. Google did what Google always tries to do at I/O. It showed the stack. Not just one product, not just one demo, but the whole map. Gemini 3.5 Flash is generally available through developer and product channels. Gemini Omni is being positioned as a creative model that starts with video and moves toward any input, any output creation. AI mode in search is being upgraded. Search is getting multimodal input and information agents. Shopping, Android, YouTube tools, and developer products are all connected to the same story. Second, OpenAI moved on Provenance. That matters because the easier it gets to generate images and video, the more platforms need ways to answer a basic question: where did this media come from? OpenAI's announcement talks about C2PA conformance, SynthID watermarking for images through Google, and a public verification tool. That is a trust layer story. Third, Anthropic acquired Stainless. That sounds technical, but it is a big signal. Agents cannot act unless they can reliably connect to tools, APIs, and services. Stainless lives close to that connector layer, SDKs, CLIs, and MCP server tooling. Fourth, Anthropic announced a global alliance with KPMG. This is not people can use Claude if they want. Anthropic says all 276,000 plus KPMG employees globally will gain access to Claude, and Claude will be embedded into KPMG Digital Gateway. Fifth, Cohere and Mistral push deeper into vertical AI. Cohere released Command A+, described as a 218 billion total parameter mixture of experts model with 25 billion active parameters, and announced the acquisition of Reliant AI for biopharma and healthcare. Mistral announced a definitive agreement to acquire AI, a physics AI company. Sixth, GitHub changed the Enterprise Copilot base model to GPT 5.3 Codex and described it as a long-term support model. That phrase matters. AI models are being managed like enterprise software dependencies. Seventh, NVIDIA gave us the money side. Record quarterly revenue of $81.6 billion, with data center revenue at $75.2 billion. NVIDIA also changed how it reports, separating data center and edge computing. Put those together and the week says this: AI is no longer just a race to announce the smartest assistant. It is a race to own the places where intelligence gets embedded. Let us start with Google, because I/O was the week's largest announcement surface. Google published a recap called 100 Things We Announced at I/O 2026, and the obvious headline is Gemini. But the deeper headline is distribution. Google says Gemini 3.5 Flash is generally available through Google Anti-Gravity, the Gemini API, Google AI Studio, and Android Studio. That one sentence tells you the strategy. Anti-gravity is the agentic development environment. The Gemini API and AI Studio are the developer on-ramps. Android Studio brings the model into mobile development. This is not a model placed behind a single chat interface. This is a model pushed into the places where builders and users already operate. Google describes Gemini 3.5 Flash as a Flash series model built for frontier intelligence and action, including long-horizon agentic work. That language matters because Flash models are usually about responsiveness, cost, and product scale usage. If the claim is frontier intelligence plus action, the goal is not just to answer questions. The goal is to make Gemini usable at the speed and price point needed for high-volume products. Google also said Gemini 3.5 Pro is already being used internally and is planned for rollout next month. That lets Google tell two stories at once: Flash for broad deployment, Pro for higher-end capability. The market has learned this pattern. A company cannot ship one giant model into every surface and call it a platform. It needs a family, cheaper, faster, more capable, more multimodal, and more specialized models for different contexts. The important part for viewers is that Google is not just trying to win chatbot usage. It is trying to make Gemini the model layer across search, Android, YouTube creation, shopping, workspace-style tasks, developer tools, and agent workflows. Google has distribution that most AI labs do not have. It has the browser, the mobile operating system, search, YouTube, Gmail, Docs, developer platforms, ad systems, and cloud. So when Google says Gemini is moving across products, the question is not whether the model is impressive in isolation. The question is whether Google can convert its distribution into daily AI habits. That is why I/O felt less like a single product event and more like a strategy memo. The model matters, but the channel may matter more. The most creator-facing Google announcement was Gemini Omni. Google describes Gemini Omni as a model that can create from any input, starting with video, and eventually working across any input and output. That phrase, starting with video, is doing a lot of work. The first wave of AI image and video tools was about generation. Type a prompt, get a clip. Type a prompt, get an image. That is powerful, but it is not how professional creative work usually happens. Real creative work is iterative. You change the background. You keep a character consistent. You apply a style. You adjust framing. You revise the shot. You cut between ideas. You make something close, then you make it usable. Google's Omni framing points toward that second phase. The announcement describes conversational editing, where a user can upload a photo or video, request changes, apply templates, change backgrounds, add camera moves, or put themselves into a scene. That is a different product category from simple text-to-video generation. It is closer to an AI-assisted editing layer. Distribution matters here too. Google says Omni Flash is rolling out through the Gemini app and Google Flow for paid subscribers. It also says Omni is available in YouTube Shorts Remix and YouTube Create for users 18 and older at no cost. That means Google is not only building the model. It is putting the creative workflow directly into the platforms where short-form video already happens. For YouTube creators, that matters because the friction of AI tools is often the gap between a cool demo and an uploadable asset. If a tool lives outside the platform, creators have to generate, export, resize, edit, watermark, caption, and upload. If the tool lives inside YouTube's own creation surfaces, the path from idea to publish is shorter. Google also says videos created with Omni include SynthID watermarking. That connects this story to the OpenAI Provenance story later in the episode. The creative AI market is not just adding capability. It is also adding signals that say, "This came from AI." The big takeaway is that AI video is evolving. The fight is not only who can produce the most realistic 5-second clip. It is who can build a controllable, repeatable, platform-native creative workflow that creators actually use every week. Google's search announcements may be even more important than the creative tools, because search is the habit layer of the web. Google says AI mode has surpassed 1 billion monthly users. It also says Gemini 3.5 Flash is the new default model for AI search globally. Those numbers and product changes matter because search is where AI stops being a novelty. A lot of people may never open a standalone AI app every day. But they already search. They ask for directions, compare products, research health symptoms, look for recipes, check facts, plan trips, troubleshoot devices, and learn how to do things. If AI becomes the default layer inside search, it reaches users who did not decide to become AI power users. Google also announced a redesigned AI search box that can take text, images, files, videos, and Chrome tabs, then reason across them. That changes the shape of a search query. Instead of typing a few keywords, the user can hand search the context itself. A file, a tab, a video, or an image becomes part of the question. Then there are information agents. Google says information agents in search will monitor topics, tasks, or projects in the background and send synthesized updates. That is a big shift. Traditional search is pull-based. You ask, it returns. A background information agent is closer to a research assistant that keeps watching. Google also announced generative UI through anti-gravity in search, where search can build custom layouts, tables, graphs, simulations, or mini-app-like experiences for a query. This is another sign that the old web interface is being challenged. Search results used to be links. Then they became answer boxes and knowledge panels. Now Google is describing outputs that look like custom interfaces. For publishers and creators, this is both opportunity and threat. On one hand, better AI search can surface content in richer ways. On the other hand, if the answer is synthesized directly in search, fewer users may click through. That is why citation, sourcing, and attribution will become a major battleground. The core idea is simple. Search is being repositioned from a list of links into an active workspace. It can ingest more context, synthesize more directly, monitor over time, and produce custom interfaces. That is powerful, but it also changes the economics of attention on the web. OpenAI's biggest announcement this week was not a new frontier model. It was about provenance. On May 19th, OpenAI said it is advancing content provenance for a safer and more transparent AI ecosystem. The announcement includes C2PA conformance, durable cross-platform SynthID watermarking for images through a partnership with Google, and a public verification tool preview for checking whether images came from OpenAI. This is easy to underrate because it does not have the same immediate excitement as a model demo. But for anyone making videos, thumbnails, news coverage, social posts, or educational content, provenance is becoming central. The problem is obvious. Generated media is getting cheap, fast, and realistic. That is good for creators and businesses. It is also risky for elections, scams, impersonation, journalism, copyright disputes, platform moderation, and public trust. If a synthetic image spreads across social platforms, people need better ways to understand whether it was AI generated, where it came from, and whether its origin signal survived editing or reposting. C2PA matters because it is an open standard for content credentials. It is not just a secret tag from one company. It is meant to support a broader ecosystem where tools, platforms, and viewers can inspect provenance metadata. SynthID matters because watermarking can add another signal, especially when metadata gets stripped away. OpenAI specifically said it is adding durable cross-platform SynthID watermarking to images through a partnership with Google. That is notable because OpenAI and Google compete fiercely on models, but provenance is one of those problems that benefits from coordination. The verification tool preview is the user-facing piece. A signal is only useful if someone can check it. OpenAI's framing suggests a world where platforms, journalists, creators, and maybe everyday users can verify whether an image came from OpenAI. There are limits. No provenance system is magic. Screenshots, edits, re-encodes, adversarial changes, and platform behavior can all complicate detection. Watermarks and metadata are signals, not absolute truth machines. But the direction is important. The AI media ecosystem is adding receipts. For the UGTP workflow, this is directly relevant. If AI-generated media is used in a video, the future best practice is not just to make it look good. It is to know where it came from, how it is licensed, and what provenance signals exist. The audience should not have to guess. Anthropic's Stainless acquisition is one of those stories that can sound small until you think about what agents actually need. Anthropic says the frontier is shifting from models that answer to agents that act. That one sentence explains the deal. A model that answers can live mostly inside a chat box. A model that acts needs reliable connections. It needs to call APIs, read files, update systems, use tools, trigger workflows, and understand the shape of external services. If those connections are fragile, the agent is fragile. If the documentation is inconsistent, the agent makes mistakes. If the SDKs are bad, developers do not build. If the tool server is unreliable, the whole workflow breaks. Stainless is close to that infrastructure layer. Anthropic says Stainless has powered every official Anthropic SDK since the early days of the Claude API. Anthropic also says Stainless tools generate SDKs, CLIs, and MCP servers across languages like TypeScript, Python, Go, and Java. That matters because MCP, the Model Context Protocol, is part of a broader push to standardize how AI systems connect to tools and data sources. If the AI industry moves toward agents that can interact with many services, then connectors become a competitive advantage. You can have a smart model, but if it cannot safely and reliably reach the tools a customer uses, it stays trapped. Think about the enterprise setting. A company may want an agent to help with customer support, finance workflows, legal review, analytics, security triage, software development, or procurement. Each of those workflows touches existing systems. The agent needs permissions, schemas, APIs, logging, error handling, and human oversight. That is not a simple prompt engineering problem. It is an integration problem. This is why the acquisition is strategic. Anthropic is not only trying to make Claude smarter. It is trying to improve the developer and connector layer around Claude, so agents can actually do work. There is a second-order effect, too. If Anthropic can make tool integration easier, it can attract developers who want to build agentic products. Developer experience becomes distribution. The easier it is to connect Claude to real systems, the more likely Claude becomes part of production workflows. So yes, stainless sounds like plumbing. But in agentic AI, plumbing is power. The companies that make the connectors reliable may end up controlling the workflows. Anthropic's KPMG alliance is the adoption side of the same enterprise story. Anthropic says KPMG operates across 138 countries and territories, and that all 276,000 plus KPMG employees globally will gain access to Claude. Claude will also be embedded into KPMG Digital Gateway, starting with tools for tax and legal clients. The number is big, but the more interesting part is the workflow. Professional services firms live on documents, analysis, compliance, client deliverables, internal knowledge, regulatory interpretation, and repeatable processes. They do not adopt AI just because it is fun to chat with. They adopt it if it speeds up research, drafting, review, reasoning, quality control, and client delivery. Anthropic says the companies will build Claude-powered products for private equity portfolio companies and use Claude in cybersecurity to find and fix vulnerabilities in critical systems. That tells us where enterprise AI is going. The first phase was general productivity. Summarize this, draft that, rewrite this email. The next phase is domain workflows, tax, legal, cyber, audit, financial analysis, portfolio operations, and client service. This also shows why model behavior matters. In a consumer setting, an annoying mistake is frustrating. In a tax, legal, or cybersecurity setting, mistakes can be expensive. That means enterprise AI has to be surrounded by governance, access control, audit logs, human review, data policies, and clearly defined use cases. The KPMG announcement also fits with the Stainless acquisition. If Claude is going to spread through enterprises, Anthropic needs integrations. KPMG will have its own systems, client data boundaries, security requirements, and workflow products. A strong connector layer helps Claude show up where work actually happens. There is a broader market signal here. AI adoption is moving from individual experimentation to institutional deployment. A single employee trying a chatbot is not the same thing as a firm-wide alliance. Once a major professional services firm embeds AI into platforms and client offerings, it pressures competitors to answer. Deloitte, EY, PwC, Accenture, law firms, banks, insurers, and consultancies all have to decide what their AI operating model looks like. The takeaway is not that every KPMG employee suddenly becomes an AI expert. The takeaway is that AI is being normalized inside professional workflows. That is where the market becomes durable, not in the novelty of the tool, but in the repeated work it changes. Cohere's Command A+ announcement is a reminder that the AI market is not only OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and Meta. Cohere is playing a different game: enterprise AI, sovereign deployment, multilingual capability, and models that fit business use cases. Cohere describes Command A+ as the final model in the Command A family. It says the model is its first mixture of experts model, with 25 billion active parameters and 218 billion total parameters. That distinction matters. In a mixture of experts architecture, not all parameters are active for every request. The model can route work through subsets of the network, which can help balance capability and efficiency. Cohere says Command A+ supports vision inputs, reasoning, translation, and agentic tasks. It also says the model supports 48 languages and is available through standard API endpoints. That language is very enterprise-oriented. Many companies do not just need an English chatbot. They need multilingual support, document understanding, regulated deployment options, business integration, and predictable APIs. The interesting thing about Command A+ is how it fits into the broader week. Google is pushing AI across consumer distribution. Anthropic is pushing enterprise connectors and major professional services adoption. Cohere is emphasizing a model family with enterprise-friendly characteristics, including language coverage and agentic work. For businesses, the model selection question is becoming more nuanced. It is no longer just which model has the highest benchmark. The question is, which model fits the data policy, latency, price, language needs, deployment environment, compliance constraints, and task mix. A company doing multilingual customer support across regions may care deeply about language coverage. A healthcare or biopharma company may care about domain expertise and data sovereignty. A public sector customer may care about local control. Command A+ also connects to the trend of model families. Companies are building lineups rather than single models: fast models, large models, reasoning models, vision-capable models, agentic models, and domain-specific deployments. That is how AI becomes infrastructure. Infrastructure needs options. So the Command A+ story is not just Cohere shipped a new model. It is evidence that enterprise AI is diversifying. The market is making room for models that are not trying to be the flashiest consumer assistant, but are trying to be useful, governable, and deployable inside serious business environments. The vertical AI story got louder this week. Cohere announced it is acquiring Reliant AI to expand sovereign enterprise AI for the global biopharma and healthcare sectors. Mistral announced a definitive agreement to acquire Emmy AI, a physics AI company, and said Emmy's co-founders plus more than 30 researchers and engineers will join Mistral's science and applied AI teams. These are not random acquisitions. They point to a market where general intelligence is not always enough. In healthcare, biopharma, manufacturing, engineering, and industrial systems, the value is not just fluent text generation. The value is domain reasoning, specialized data, scientific workflows, regulatory context, and integration with expert teams. Cohere's Reliant AI announcement uses the phrase sovereign enterprise AI. That matters because many organizations, especially in healthcare, government, and regulated industries, care deeply about where data lives, who controls infrastructure, and how models are deployed. A sovereign AI strategy is not just branding. It reflects real constraints around privacy, jurisdiction, compliance, and trust. Reliant AI brings biomedical datasets and domain technology, according to Cohere's announcement. That is the kind of asset that can make a model more valuable in a specific sector. A generic assistant can summarize a paper. A domain-aware system can fit into biomedical research workflows, literature analysis, evidence synthesis, and specialized knowledge work. Mistral's Emmy AI acquisition points in a different vertical direction: physics AI and industrial AI. Mistral says the acquisition strengthens its position in industrial AI, engineering, and manufacturing. This is where models may help simulate systems, support design workflows, reason over physical constraints, or accelerate engineering tasks. Again, that is not the same thing as writing a social post or answering a general question. The deeper point is that vertical AI may become a moat. Foundation models are important, but specialized data, expert workflows, and industry relationships can be just as important. A hospital, pharmaceutical company, manufacturer, or energy company does not want a toy. It wants a system that understands its domain and can be deployed safely. This also explains why the AI market will not collapse into one winner. Different sectors have different needs. Some will choose the broadest consumer platform. Some will choose the best coding agent. Some will choose sovereign enterprise models. Some will choose physics-aware industrial systems. Some will use all of them in different places. The vertical wave is a sign of maturity. AI companies are moving from "look what this model can do" to "look where this system can create economic value." GitHub's changelog item this week is short, but it says a lot. On May 17, GitHub said GPT 5.3 Codex is now the base model for all Copilot business and enterprise organizations. It replaces GPT 4.1 when an organization has not approved other models through its internal review process. GitHub also says GPT 5.3 Codex is its first long-term support model in partnership with OpenAI, with availability through February 4, 2027. That sounds like a product setting, but it is really an enterprise governance story. AI coding tools are moving into the same world as software dependencies, cloud services, security policies, and procurement approvals. Developers often think about models in terms of capability. Can it write better code, explain errors, refactor a file, generate tests, or reason through a bug? Enterprises have to think about more layers. Which model is approved? What data can it see? Does it meet internal security review? How long will it be available? What happens when it is deprecated? How are costs tracked? Which models count against premium request units? Which teams can use which modes? The phrase long-term support model is the important signal. LTS language comes from enterprise software. It tells organizations that a version will remain available for a defined period, giving them stability. That matters because companies cannot rebuild governance every time a model name changes. They need predictable timelines. This also tells us something about the future of AI coding. The early phase was individual developers trying code completion. The next phase was chat inside the IDE. The current phase is closer to AI pair programming, agentic coding, test generation, code review, and repository-level reasoning. As that becomes part of business-critical software delivery, companies need control. GitHub's move also fits the broader OpenAI and Microsoft ecosystem. Codex-branded models are becoming more central to coding workflows, and Copilot remains one of the most important distribution channels for AI inside technical work. For developers, the practical takeaway is to learn not only how to prompt coding assistants, but how to manage them as part of a team process. That means knowing when to trust output, when to write tests, how to review generated code, and how to document AI-assisted changes. AI coding is not just a feature anymore. It is becoming part of the software development lifecycle, and enterprises are starting to treat it that way. Now we get to the infrastructure bill. NVIDIA's May 20th earnings release reported record quarterly revenue of $81.6 billion for the quarter ended April 26, 2026. That was up 85% from a year earlier. Data center revenue was $75.2 billion, up 92% year-over-year. Those are enormous numbers, but the important thing is what they represent. Every AI product we talked about earlier needs compute somewhere. Search with AI answers needs inference capacity. Video generation and editing need GPUs. Enterprise assistants need secure, scalable inference. Coding agents need fast model calls. Healthcare and physics AI need training, fine-tuning, retrieval, simulation, or deployment infrastructure. Even provenance systems and verification tooling need platform support. NVIDIA also announced a new reporting framework with two market platforms, data center and edge computing. Within data center, NVIDIA will break out hyperscale and AC, where AC includes AI clouds, industrial, and enterprise. That reporting change is a signal. NVIDIA is organizing its business around the different places AI compute is being consumed. Hyperscale covers the giant cloud and platform players. AI clouds, industrial, and enterprise point toward the next wave, companies outside the classic internet giants building AI capacity for their own workloads, their own customers, and their own industries. Edge computing points toward AI moving closer to devices, factories, robots, vehicles, cameras, and local systems. This matters because the AI market is often discussed as if everything happens in a browser tab. But AI is physical. It needs chips, memory, networking, power, data centers, cooling, supply chains, and deployment architecture. The phrase AI factory is useful because it reframes data centers as production facilities. They produce tokens, embeddings, images, video, recommendations, code, and decisions. There is also a cost reality. More AI usage means more compute demand. If AI becomes embedded in search, YouTube, enterprise workflows, software development, healthcare, and industrial systems, the demand curve can keep rising. That is the bull case for NVIDIA. The risk side is that customers will push for efficiency, alternative chips, custom silicon, smaller models, and better utilization. The NVIDIA numbers make the weak feel grounded. Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere, Mistral, and GitHub are building the software and workflow layer. NVIDIA is showing how large the compute layer underneath has become. Now let us translate the week for creators. The big message is that creative AI is becoming less separate from the platforms where content is published. Google's Gemini Omni story is the clearest example. If AI video editing appears inside Gemini, Flow, YouTube Shorts Remix, and YouTube Create, then creators will not need to leave the platform as often to generate or modify assets. That changes the production workflow. Instead of treating AI as a one-off tool that creates a clip, creators can use it as a layer in ideation, storyboarding, editing, thumbnails, B-roll, and remixing. The best creators will not simply hit generate and upload whatever comes out. They will use AI to move faster while still applying taste, fact-checking, pacing, and editorial judgment. The second creator takeaway is provenance. OpenAI's announcement and Google's SynthID references show that AI-generated media will increasingly carry signals. For creators, this is not just a compliance issue. It is a trust issue. Viewers are becoming more skeptical. Platforms are becoming more careful. Brands are becoming more cautious. If a video uses generated assets, there should be a clean answer to where those assets came from. That is why a workflow like this one matters. Source folder, sources JSON, media guide, B-roll manifest, and visible citations. It may feel like extra work, but it protects the channel. It lets the audience know the video is not just repeating hype. It also makes it easier to reuse assets responsibly. The third takeaway is that AI content will get more competitive. If tools become easier, more people can make decent-looking clips. That means the advantage shifts to story selection, clarity, speed, sourcing, voice, and taste. Everyone can generate a generic tech montage. Not everyone can explain why Google search becoming agentic changes publisher economics, or why Anthropic buying an SDK tooling company matters for agents. For YouTube specifically, the opportunity is to combine fast production with deep receipts. Use AI to move faster. Use primary sources to stay credible. Use B-roll and motion graphics to keep pacing. Use narration that explains implications, not just headlines. In short, creators should treat AI as a production multiplier, not a replacement for editorial thinking. The channels that win will be the ones that can move quickly without becoming sloppy. For businesses, this week says the AI conversation is maturing. A year ago, many companies were still asking whether employees should be allowed to use chatbots. Now the conversation is more specific. Which workflows, which data, which models, which controls, which integrations, and which measurable outcomes. Anthropic's KPMG alliance is a perfect example. Claude is not being positioned only as a general assistant. It is being embedded into KPMG Digital Gateway and tied to tax, legal, private equity, and cybersecurity workflows. That is the enterprise pattern. AI value appears when the model is placed inside an existing workflow with the right data, controls, and human review. The Stainless acquisition adds another business lesson. Integration is not optional. If AI cannot connect to the systems where work happens, adoption stalls. Enterprises have CRMs, document stores, ticketing systems, accounting tools, code repositories, data warehouses, security platforms, and internal APIs. Agents need controlled access to those systems. Cohere and Mistral add the vertical lesson. Healthcare, biopharma, industrial engineering, manufacturing, and scientific workflows require more than generic language ability. They require domain context, specialized data, and deployment models that satisfy regulation and customer trust. The business question should not be how do we use AI? That question is too broad. The better question is, where do we have repetitive knowledge work, clear inputs, reviewable outputs, and enough data context to make AI useful? Then ask, what can go wrong, and what controls do we need? Businesses should also separate experimentation from production. It is fine to test many tools. But production systems need governance. Who can use the model? What data can be sent? How outputs are reviewed? What logs are retained? How errors are handled? And how vendors are evaluated. There is also a procurement shift coming. Companies will increasingly compare models not just on demos, but on deployment options, data handling, latency, price, support, language coverage, domain fit, and long-term availability. The practical takeaway: the AI winners inside companies will be the teams that combine technical understanding with process knowledge. The person who knows the workflow and can safely redesign it with AI may be more valuable than the person who simply knows the trendiest prompt. For developers, this week had 3 important signals. First, GitHub made GPT 5.3 Codex the base model for Copilot Business and Enterprise. Second, Anthropic acquired Stainless, which lives close to SDK and MCP server tooling. Third, Cohere released a model positioned for agentic tasks and standard API access. The common thread is that AI development is becoming more operational. It is not just about asking a model to write a function. It is about building systems where models call tools, use APIs, reason over repositories, generate code, and fit into team workflows. GitHub's long-term support language is especially important. Developers are used to dependencies, versions, support windows, and deprecations. AI models are starting to enter that world. A company may approve one model for enterprise use, block another, or require review before teams can adopt a new model. That means developers need to understand not only model capability, but model governance. Anthropic's Stainless acquisition points to another developer reality. Agents are only useful if integrations are reliable. If you are building an agent, you need clear tool definitions, predictable APIs, good SDKs, error handling, authentication, permissions, observability, and tests. The exciting demo is the agent completing a task. The hard engineering is making it work when inputs are messy and systems fail. This is where MCP matters. A standard protocol for connecting models to context and tools can make it easier to build agentic systems across services. But standards do not eliminate engineering judgment. Developers still have to decide what tools an agent should access, what actions require confirmation, how to prevent destructive behavior, and how to log what happened. The biggest developer mistake in AI coding is treating generated code as finished code. AI can accelerate work, but it can also produce subtle bugs, insecure patterns, wrong assumptions, and tests that prove the wrong thing. The developer's job shifts toward review, system design, validation, and integration. So the practical advice is, learn to use coding models, but also learn to constrain them. Use them to explore, draft, refactor, and test. Then verify. Run the tests. Read the diffs. Check the edge cases. Understand the architecture. AI will make many developers faster. It will not remove the need for engineering taste. It would be easy to make this week sound like a clean march towards smarter everything. But the risks are real. Start with trust. OpenAI's Provenance announcement exists because generated media can confuse people. C2PA, SynthID, and verification tools are useful signals, but they are not magic. Media can be cropped, screenshotted, re-encoded, reposted, or manipulated. Metadata can be stripped. Watermarking can be attacked. The future will need multiple signals, platform policies, user education, and responsible disclosure. Then there is enterprise risk. Claude inside KPMG, agent connectors through Stainless, AI coding through GitHub, and vertical AI in healthcare or industrial systems all point towards serious use cases. Serious use cases need serious controls. If an AI drafts tax guidance, finds a vulnerability, suggests a legal argument, writes production code, or analyzes biomedical information, humans still need review processes. The risk is not only that the model is wrong. The risk is that the organization trusts it in the wrong way. There is also over-automation. Agents that act across tools are powerful, but every action surface creates potential damage. An agent that can read is less risky than an agent that can write. An agent that can recommend is less risky than one that can execute. Companies need permission boundaries, confirmations, rollback paths, and logging. The economics are another constraint. NVIDIA's numbers show huge demand, but compute is not free. If every product adds AI, cost pressure rises. That can push companies towards smaller models, caching, routing, custom chips, quantization, batching, and more selective use. The best AI products may not be the ones that call the biggest model every time. They may be the ones that route tasks intelligently. There is also the publisher and creator economy question. If search becomes more agentic and more answer-focused, fewer users may click through to original sources. That can hurt the information ecosystem unless attribution and traffic models evolve. Finally, there is the user skill problem. AI can make people faster, but it can also make them less careful. The strongest users will combine AI speed with human judgment. The weakest workflows will automate uncertainty and call it productivity. So the optimistic version of this week is AI is becoming infrastructure. The cautious version is infrastructure needs standards, governance, economics, and responsibility. Both are true. Here is the final read. This week was not about one company winning AI forever. It was about the AI market moving into its infrastructure phase. Google is trying to make Gemini the layer inside search, Android, YouTube creation, developer tools, shopping, and personal agent workflows. OpenAI is working on Provenance because generated media needs receipts. Anthropic is buying and partnering around the connector and enterprise workflow layer. Cohere is releasing enterprise-oriented models and buying into healthcare and biopharma. Mistral is moving deeper into physics and industrial AI. GitHub is treating coding models like enterprise software dependencies. NVIDIA is showing the size of the compute build-out underneath everything. The phrase to remember is, models are becoming systems. A model by itself is not enough. It needs distribution. It needs memory or context. It needs tools. It needs permissions. It needs citations. It needs provenance. It needs a way to fit into workflows. It needs economics that make sense. It needs hardware to run on. That is why the next AI battleground will be broader than model benchmarks. Benchmarks still matter, but they do not tell the whole story. The companies that win will be the ones that turn intelligence into dependable workflows. For creators, that means AI tools will get more powerful and more embedded, but credibility will matter more. For businesses, it means the real value is not experimenting with a chatbot. It is redesigning workflows responsibly. For developers, It means AI coding and agent systems are becoming part of normal software engineering. For everyone else, it means AI will show up in more places without always announcing itself as AI. The week also gives us a watch list. Watch whether Gemini's distribution translates into daily usage. Watch whether Provenance signals become visible and trusted. Watch whether Claude's enterprise partnerships produce real workflow products. Watch whether Cohere and Mistral can turn vertical AI into durable business. Watch how GitHub manages model lifecycle inside Copilot. Watch whether NVIDIA's AI factory growth continues as customers demand efficiency. The short version, AI is not slowing down. It is spreading sideways into the tools, workflows, platforms, and infrastructure that already shape everyday work. That is the story of this week, and it is probably the story of the next year.